First, we have to know where the badge identification information is coming from. Second, we have to assume that if you're using an iOS device, that the badge reader will be replaced or replacing the keyboard input that is normally presented by the iPad. You'll see in different parts of this video that I've tried different card readers to explain this effort, and you'll see the differences that occur when a card reader is attached to the system. In this case, I've made a number of configuration changes. Requiring authentication to edit or end the booking in progress. Authentication is a bad term for these two parameters because we're not really authenticating, we're simply identifying. All we're doing is identifying that you're a valid user in the system. We're not authenticating the original user to any of these actions. So literally anybody with a qualified badge number could swipe in and end or edit the booking in progress. Now, in the identification authentication area, I did not want to enable a numeric keyboard, and I did specify a default group for manual identification. That's always a backup just in case. It doesn't really apply to the badge reader system. For the group authentication field, I chose badge number as that's the area of the contact or group that I'll be using to recognize what information is coming from the badge read itself. Of course, that comes from the group identification level, the host or the group. And then I do want to authenticate without a password. If I use any other authentication method within this area, it will not work properly. Authentication with password, group lookup, manual input, or no identification. Most of those require a keyboard to fill in additional information, and no identification, of course, would then turn off the need for authentication at all, or in this case, identification. So I'll use authentication without a password, which the badge itself will represent my identification. I always want to obfuscate the external reference field, which in this case would be the badge number group field. I want to make that bullet points instead of populating the text because I don't want users to see what information the badge is sending. I can scroll down through most of this and actually just adjust the labels and messages to match what I want. What you'll note is that I may have changed a couple things to say badge number. In this case, I might want to say right here badge ID or badge number instead of username to avoid confusion when walking up to the system. Finally, under the new booking area, what I want to make sure that I do is that I define a default event name, a default event type, a default setup count, and a default status in there. If I don't do those things, then the system will require extra clicks or keyboard input in order to populate that information. In this case, by populating the default event name for a new booking, I don't require a keyboard because we're simply indicating what the event name will be. I also want to say do not display the event name for a new booking. If I say no to this, it does not provide a field for this information to even be changed, in which case I don't have to worry about the user not having a keyboard in order to change that information. And I don't want to make an event name required for the new booking because I don't want them to have to populate anything. We're already populating it. So in that respect, that's the information that needs to be changed in a typical profile in order for that to work. Now, if you're including this with the the Armor Active signs, then there is also the use Armor Active enclosure option, which you would turn to yes, which would then start sending the tones along with the actual change of event type or status of the room. I have a standard card reader, which is a USB style credit card reader, and I have a wand infrared laser barcode scanner. Read standard normal barcodes. What do these actually have in common, or what do they actually do with the system? Well, I'll show you. So up here on my screen, I have blankness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and swipe one of my cards against the credit card reader here while looking at the screen so you can see what it actually does. it fakes the computer into thinking it's a keyboard. So when I swipe, it populates that information across the screen. Now, credit cards like this, my Sam's Club card here, carries a lot more information than what would be necessary for EMS to recognize an identity, but that's because it's a proprietary system. Most credit cards, your standard Visa, MasterCard kind of logo cards, will have standardized information as well that will carry certain amounts of information that their terminals will read. Example, my Macy's card here will carry my Macy's identification card at the end, the 943 number. The 8888 number is a proprietary number, and the beginning number is my identifier to indicate that that's real. Now, each one of these systems recognize different pieces of the information that the cards carry, and that's what we use as well. We use it as a keyboard input. The wand reader works very similarly. If I look at a barcode, such as this one right here, 10010575147, and I take the barcode reader and scan it, it's going to scan that same information time and again as I scan through and recognize that information. It's doing the exact same thing an RFID reader will do. It just captures the information in the barcode and translates it into text that types over into whatever device you're using. In this case, a standard text editor or even Glance. For the RFID readers, I bought two different options. First, I bought the USB RFID reader. It's called the Smart ID Card Reader EM4100. It's a standard 125 kilohertz receiver, and it basically allows local proximity reading from a distance, in this case, a card to be swiped against it, and it plugs into USB. I also purchased a cheaper version of the same model, or the same style, which is the USB EM4100 125 kilohertz proximity reader. Just different manufacturers, different types. One thing that I did learn is that they also have different voltage requirements. One is a low voltage option. The other one is a full 5 volt 1 amp option. Both of them are 5 volts. One of them only uses 0.5 amps or half an amp, which is actually what is necessary in order for this whole system to work. Both of them come with standard RFID cards. As you can see, I have 5 of them here. And they come with these little dongle pieces, which are also RFID transmitters. Their code is listed on the back of each one. What you'll note about these cards is that each one has a digit code listed here, 00105755147. That is the card information that will be transmitted to the different readers. Right here is what makes all of the magic happen. You'll note that it has a standard lightning port, or whatever Apple calls it, for their power charge adapter that plugs into the back of any iPad current in these models. And on the other side, it has what they call the camera adapter, which is just a USB port, and a pass-through charging cable. Now this is important because if we want the system to charge the iPad and also connect peripheral devices, we need to have that split between the two. I'll show you in just a moment how that works. See, my iPad here is charging very conveniently on an iPad charger. And let me just go home here so you can see that it's nice and charging. Great. Now, if I want to, this little magic device that I told you about before will be my in-between for that charging apparatus. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug that, plug my charger into that device, as you can see here, and then plug this into the iPad. Now that's going to act as a pass-through for now, so the system will now recognize that as a chargeable device. Very easy, very simple. It's a $29 device, by the way, that you can buy at Apple for $49 or Amazon for $29. Now, what you'll note here is I did have those two different readers, the low voltage one and the normal voltage one. Now the system is going to recognize
most of, if not all, input that comes into this as either a camera or a keyboard. Now, Apple doesn't really want you to know that, but it is just converting a standard USB device into anything that the iPad can read. And since the iPad is still running of Linux in the background running, or Unix, that said, a lot of the device drivers are standard for that system. Now, I'm going to switch over and plug in one of the devices here and show you what that means. First, I'm going to go ahead and open up a notepad. And we'll go ahead and create a new note here. Now, when I create a new note over here, let me just close that out. When I create a new note here, the keyboard comes up because it wants me to be able to type. So I can go ahead and start typing stuff, blah, 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 blah. Now, when the system recognizes that something is connected to it, there's going to be a problem. The problem is the keyboard will go away. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in, just for example, my wand scanner here. Now, when I plugged in my wand scanner, you'll note that the keyboard went away. I no longer have the option to bring it up. By pushing this little button here, I don't actually get the keyboard. It goes away completely. However, I do have the capability of now using my keyboard scanner. So I'm going to let my wand scan across this barcode. And as you can see on the iPad, just like on the computer, scanning the barcode populates that information. This one, keyboard comes back, and I'll plug in one of my RFID scanners. The RFID scanner I'm going to choose right now is one of the cheaper models that has the normal voltage level of 1 amp. Let's get this stuff out of the way for just a second. When I plug in this item, sometimes these devices will work, and sometimes they won't. This is supposed to glow green when it's working successfully, and it is not. Now, will it work? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, no. Now, the difference is what voltage you have powering your device here. Now, if I unplug the power, I'm going to get this. So the system, the iPad, recognized the device name, which is called Barcode Reader. Apparently that's what the device is transmitting its identification as, and that it requires too much power for the iPad to use. If I plug power back in, which I'll do right now, maybe, that notice goes away, the keyboard disappears again, and now I can use that device. But as you can see, it's now transmitting that information right to the system. And that is the same that's on the actual key, which you can't really see very well. But as you can see, 007-747-9077 does scan to 007-747-9077. Okay, so I'm going to unplug this one. So this one also glows red, but this is supposed to glow red. And what you'll notice is if I scan in a card, standard RFID card, it passes that information over. 105-75147, 105-75147. It is now populating that data. What you'll note, though, is I can't do anything with this information. I can't do anything keyboard-wise because this is replacing that keyboard input. Okay, so now that you've seen the different ways that this can work, I'm going to go ahead and use Glance based on that profile setting. When I open up Glance, have it to run in the system here, just a second to load. As you can see, I've configured the background and other items to match what I use. Now, in order for this to work, we no longer have a keyboard on the screen that will pop up. So the first thing I always have to do is notify the system that I'm walking up to it. I can't just tap my ID and expect it to work. My expectation as a user would be I simply have to scan to get the process started. But right now, because Glance requires user interaction at first, I have to hit the reserve button. When I hit the reserve button, as you'll notice, my label has changed to badge number and authentication method. I'm going to use badge 001-057-5147, which is designated to Billie Hawkins in EMS. I scan that, it populates that information, and it moves right to the next screen. Employee Billie Hawkins is grayed out because I have badged in. No event name is listed because I don't have a keyboard to type it in. The attendees, the start time and end time is automatically populated for me. I have a 30-minute start and end time. I'll go ahead and hit reserve. I've now reserved that meeting. The extra field here that comes up probably should be removed. We don't need to notify somebody that it's been successful. We really only need to notify them if something went wrong. So we could probably get rid of that. But otherwise, the meeting is now in session. It is started. My meeting is populated. Billie Hawkins is listed. I don't have anything else to do. Now, I do have a number of other cards. Tony, accounting department, Jill, and Dan. Now, any of these cards, I'll use Dan here, any of these cards can alter these meetings because we're not authenticating, we're identifying. So if I go ahead and choose adjust here, it's going to ask me for that badge number again. His badge is 6114. And see, as you can see, even though it's not Billie Hawkins badging in, he can still add time to Billie's meeting. That's something that should probably be adjusted as well. Now, if I want to end this meeting, I can do so as well with anybody's card. I'm going to go ahead and use Tony's card here to do that. Tony Pacello, I badge. It allows Tony to end that meeting for Billie Hawkins. It may notify that in the audit section or the history of the account or of the reservation, but it does allow anybody to do that, which is a kind of a bummer. Most customers would like that if the host is the one starting the meeting, they would like to be the only ones to end the meeting. However, some organizations just want that accountability, in which case this is just fine. I can go ahead and choose reserve here on the screen. I can badge in with any of my badges themselves. I'll go ahead and use accounting department. As you can see, accounting department. I can badge in and swipe. I'll cancel that one out. If, for example, I badge a reservation badge where the identification is not valid, I can click OK, but I can't badge again. It doesn't clear that field out. So I have to close out completely and start over and then rebadge. Oh, it's wrong, but it kept that field full. So now I can't take a valid badge and swipe because now it's going to add to the end of that badge number. So we should probably fix that as well. So I hope you enjoyed the demonstration of Glance running with 2 different types of RFID readers, a barcode scanner, a credit card or magnetic card stripe reader, and 2 different types of RFID badges, both the pin or the portable kind and the flat card kind. Thank you.